Now we can see a new world lead of you. A world in which there is a very real prospect of a new world order. The new world order does not mean surrendering our national sovereignty or forfeiting our interests. He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial. How can I convince you when your ears refuse to hear? You turn your heart away from me each time when I draw near. Your eyes refuse to meet with mine, they glance away in fear. Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show? My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something. We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. He is the free American, Clay Douglas. Catch the Free American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger wells inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon down from the sky and stop the sun. For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8631.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hours. I am Clay Douglas. I am your host. And my guest today is Arnie Rosner. Hello, Arnie. Are you with me?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. Nice to have you here. A new guest on my show. And you've got a website up here. I've got scannedretina.com. I mean, that's a little scary to me. That's part of the new identification system they have to make sure you're in with the system, the banking system. And Arnie, the question that pops to my mind first, because I've been to your site and I've got one clip that I'm going to play in a few minutes here, from your due diligence section of your site. What's wrong with America? What are we doing here? What's wrong? What are we trying to accomplish here? What's going on in your opinion?
Well, thank you for asking. That's a great question, Clay. I don't have the answer. I mean, I'm just some old dumb guy that just figured out some of this stuff in the last few years. But even to me as an old dumb guy, I got to tell you that I don't think there's anything wrong with America. I don't think there's anything wrong with the founding documents and the founders. I think the concept that they put forth originally for this country is terrific. It's brilliant, and it still applies. But the fly in the ointment is the fact that those people who we have entrusted with the authority to act on our behalf as our representatives are all crooks. They're all criminals. They have decided to show their allegiance to the British Crown instead of to the Americans, to whom they, swore an oath to protect and defend our documents, and then they're taking our money to do this. That's just plain fraud.
Yes, sir.
So
I've been, Arnie, I've been accused of being anti-government, anti-Semitic, racist, everything else. And I said, man, I am probably the most pro-government guy you'll ever meet. I took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States when I was 17 years old, and unlike probably 95% of the other people that were in the Army with me, they didn't bother to read it. And they didn't bother to read the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, although at the time I volunteered for Vietnam, we'd been in a Cold War for 50 years, just about, give or take a few. And who was our enemy? It wasn't the Russian people, but they programmed us, again, the Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. They made movies about it. The Russians are coming. Cold War. We got more nuclear. We need more nuclear weapons. We need more planes. We need more tanks. And at the same time, this enemy that we had was in the process of killing 60 million white Christian Russians. I think that's pretty incredible.
Well, the first thing I'd have to ask you is who is the ones that claim you're anti-government?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. It was the media, it was propaganda agencies, well-funded propaganda agencies like the Anti-Defamation League, like the and by the way, the Anti-Defamation League was formed to try to protect and offset a Jewish gentleman that raped a young girl, and the ADL was formed to try to paint a good picture of that. They've done the same thing with what happened at Waco. They said the government had to go in there and get those people because they were child molesters, so they had to kill 17 little children to protect them from a child molester. I got a little problem with that.
Well, would you expect anything less from the people who were trying to badmouth you?
No, I expect that. And this is the reason I started this radio show. I did two things. I was sitting in Miami in my canal front home, and I was publishing magazines. I had boat companies. I had all kinds of things going, doing pretty well. And suddenly I watched what happened at Waco, and I said I can never sit back and watch something like that happen again on television. I was screaming at the TV, where's the Texas Rangers? Where's hold on just a second here. I'm missing something here. Let me get something up here. Okay, here. Sorry about that. All right. Sorry about that. Running a little behind here, bringing you guys up. Welcome to Crusade Radio. Welcome to the Free American Hour. My guest is Arnie Rosner, and we're just talking about what the problem is with the United States. Uh, what woke me up, and I've been trying to wake up the American people ever since, was watching the government stormtroopers, jackbooted thugs, murder 17 little children and their families at a little church, a Christian church right outside of Waco, a little place called Elk, Texas. It didn't happen in Waco. It happened in Elk, Texas. And this church has been there for 50 years. And I swore I would not sit back and watch something like that. So I did two things. Three things, I guess. I started this radio show. I started the Free American magazine. And I started the militias around the country. Of course, that got me listed as being anti-government and armed and dangerous. And my response to that is, what part of the Second Amendment don't you understand?
Clay, I got to congratulate you, because early on you must have proved to be a pretty big threat to these guys for them to take you on the way they did. But what you're describing is one of the reasons I've become a racist. And I'm damn proud of being a racist. And I think everybody should be a racist.
Well, let me address that for a moment. If you're a black man and you join the NAC, you can join the NAACP and nobody thinks anything about it. If you're Jewish and you join the ADL or the JDL or donate to the Southern Poverty Law, nobody thinks anything about it. If you're white, you're proud of being white, you're a racist. According who does that to you? Who does that to you, Arnie? That's what I'd like to address. The media does it to you. The media does it to you. Go ahead.
Why would you want to do that?
Why would I want to do?
Yeah, why would anybody want to join these different organizations?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I don't join organizations because I'm a free man. I'm the free American. I don't need a support group. I don't need to but that's me. I mean, I've always been called the loner. That was my nickname when I was riding motorcycles.
Yeah.
I was called the loner.
The whole point is there's only one race. That's the human race. And I think everybody ought to be proud to be a member of the human race. You see, we let these guys manipulate us because they break us up into these little discrete groups. Once they do that, then they begin playing one group against the other. We've got these hyphenated Americans.
Divide and conquer.
Absolutely. Oldest game in the world. But you know what? That's not the worst of it. Maybe it's my age, and maybe it's my ignorance. More likely it's my incompetence and my stupidity. But something really occurred to me, just fairly recently, too. You got to realize I didn't begin to get involved in this until Obama got elected. I gotta thank him, because when the DCCC started attacking Rush Limbaugh's right to free speech almost immediately after the coronation, I recognized something was wrong. Until that point, I thought America was everything I thought it was. And how would I know any different? I was raised that way. I went to school. That's what they taught us. How would anybody know any different? So it wasn't until I was about 73 that I realized America was not the America I was led to believe it was. And now, within the last few months, I've been able to look at the history and go back. And it's so obvious to me now, Clay, that we have been played for suckers from the very beginning of this country. Now, maybe not everybody's going to agree with me on that, and that's okay. But if they go look at the scan retina and look under the plan, you'll find all of these various efforts by Congress since the beginning, and not just Congress, but the administrations, the whole thing. It started, 12 items in a row: the Civil War, the 14th Amendment, the 16th Amendment, the 17th Amendment, the Federal Reserve Act, the United Nations Charter, the Supreme Court removing prayer and Bible reading, Lyndon Johnson introduced gun control. What part of the Second Amendment didn't he understand? The Supreme Court and the Roe versus Wade. George Bush put in the Patriot Act. Obama put in the Military Commissions Act, along with Bush. And Congress passes now the NDAA and the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. All of these are illegal, unlawful. None of them are legal. Well, I shouldn't say legal because they've made them legal, but that's bull crap. We have not had legitimate government since the 1800s, and probably never. The Congress, from what I can tell, have signed over their allegiance to the British Crown. Now, we're speaking not the Royal Crown, we're speaking the British Crown, the financial group, kind of like Wall Street. So when you begin to investigate the Crown, you find out it's a sovereign part of Great Britain. It's like Washington, D.C., another sovereign country, so to speak. It's like Belgium. It's like the Vatican. Then you begin to see the network. My goodness, we've got the New World Order has had us under control for so long, and they're pretending like they don't have us under control. It's all a farce.
Well, I have said, Arnie, that the money changers that Jesus ran out of the temple, they're still with us. They just changed the name of the temple. And the way they're keeping control over us, I said they don't call television programming for nothing. And
Right.
I got this from your site. I'd like to, let's take a few minutes here and play this clip. It's entitled, Who Owns the Media? And this is our biggest problem. The reason I started the Free American Radio Show, the Free American Magazine, was because of the way the media betrayed us. They tried to convince you that somehow we had to go in and kill 17 little children to save them from a child molester. That discredited the whole media, the television industry, the movies that they're making. I mean, they're already threatening the NRA. We're going to make a movie that's going to destroy the NRA. Let's just, all of our threats, all of our problems are coming from the media. And Thomas Jefferson, our founding father, who I do believe was highly intelligent, was probably one of the smartest men in history. He wrote the Declaration of Independence, and he told us, if you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that will spring up around them will leave your children homeless in the land that we conquered. And we've got people living in tunnels under Las Vegas, under New York. They call them tunnel people. They're homeless people that are living there that have been dispossessed by this banking conglomerate, and the whole thing is covered up by the media. Let's listen to this. the news
The year is
definer.
1917, and Representative Oscar Callaway enters a disturbing statement into the U.S. congressional record. The statement reveals why J.P. Morgan interests hired 12 high-ranking news managers. The 12 were asked to determine the most influential newspapers in America. They were to figure out how many news organizations it would take to control generally the policy of the daily press of the United States. The 12 found it was only necessary to purchase the control of 25 of the greatest papers. An agreement was reached. The policy of the papers was bought, and an editor was placed at each paper to ensure that all published information was in keeping with the new policy. Soon, that policy would be defined by a front group formed by J.P. Morgan and his colleagues. In fact, Morgan's personal attorney was founding president of the organization, the Council on Foreign Relations. Today, the CFR maintains that its goal is to increase America's understanding of the world. However, the actual objective of this highly exclusive club is revealed by the rare admissions of the insiders themselves. In the early 60s, a Georgetown University professor collects information for a book favorable to the network of powerful men who founded the CFR. For 2 years, Professor Carroll Quigley is allowed to examine the confidential papers and secret records of this network. Quigley reveals that these men aim to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. In short, they seek total and quiet control of the entire world. And the CFR is their most visible conduit for carrying out that agenda. CFR members include America's wealthiest tycoons, as well as the highly placed elite in government, academic institutions, tax-exempt foundations, and the establishment media. Ruling Class Journalists, written by Richard Harwood, describes the CFR membership as the ruling establishment in the United States. The Washington Post article boasted that news reporters who are CFR members do not merely analyze and interpret foreign policy for the United States, they help make it. Who are these policymakers? Many of their faces are familiar. NBC's Tom Brokaw, CBS's Dan Rather, ABC's Barbara Walters, Jim Lehrer of PBS, William F. Buckley of National Review, media mogul Rupert Murdoch, owner of the giant multifaceted News Corporation. These media heavyweights, and many others like them, are members of the CFR. Powerful corporations are also invited to become members. At the close of the 20th century, CFR influence presided over far-reaching consolidations of media control. In 1995, CFR members Michael Eisner of Disney and ABC's Thomas Murphy merged their media empires. Soon after the merger, the Disney-ABC empire becomes a CFR corporate member. In the year 2000, the world's largest internet service provider, America Online, joins forces with Time Warner, one of the world's largest news organizations. The CEOs favoring the move are CNN's Thomas Johnson and Time Warner's Gerald Levin, both CFR members. Once again, another media giant is created under the shadow of CFR influence. Today, an elite handful of individuals define the agendas that are supported by the empire of establishment news.
Well, there you
All right.
got it.
You know,
It's not.
go ahead, Arnie. You sent me some of the report from the Reese Commission, and the Reese Commission. Norman Dodd. His statement, just to make it brief, and then we can fill this in, is that he asked the Ford Foundation what their purpose was, and their purpose during the Cold War was to merge us successfully with Russia, with the Soviet Union. And this is part of this whole false flag Cold War bullshit scenario that was laid on the American people.
Everything we've been told, it's been a lie from the beginning that I can remember as a kid. And here's the thing. When you really go back and analyze it, it's the wealthy, the Rockefellers, all of those, J.P. Morgan, the bankers, it's all of them that are behind everything, but they do it through Congress. Congress is the enemy within, so to speak. Our domestic enemy is our representatives in Congress. I'm not sure they all know it, but I gotta tell you, everything that happens, including the usurpation of the office of president by the usurper Obama, could never have happened if Congress did not help aid and abet. They're all guilty of treason.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. And it ain't about Obama being black or, he's a perfect new world, in my opinion, he's the perfect new world order leader. And you heard George Bush Sr. talking at the beginning of the show. Now we can see a new world coming up. And the new world order does not mean giving up your sovereignty. If you buy that, I got a bridge I can sell you in Arizona.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of bridges for sale that people. And the worst part is Americans are buying them.
Yes, sir.
Look, this government, by Congress, has even passed legislation which makes it lawful, or I should say legal, for them to manufacture news like infomercials, and play it as if it was news. They are influencing everything we see and hear. That's why television has been so helpful to them. Look, here's how stupid we are. We buy the damn TVs. We buy the products that the sponsors, the corporate sponsors, use to put in the programming and pay for these programs, to pay for the movies, to pay for Hollywood to create all this propaganda, and then they make it lawful or legal, excuse me. You need to understand the difference between legal and lawful.
It's the color of law. It's called the color of law. It looks like law. They passed it, but it ain't law. It's just like our prisons are filled up with people for drug crimes, and if a man with a badge can come up and arrest you for a piece of a plant you got in your pocket, you live in a police state, bud.
Well, it's worse than that, because I sent you a clip of Randy Dew from prison, and there's a guy that's defending the rights of some people who have been defrauded by a judicial system, who is working in collusion with attorneys and estate planners in Nebraska and fleecing elder people who are in their final years of all of their assets. Unlawful, but they're trying to make it look like it's legal. So it's the Congress that's behind it. They're the first ones we have to address. We have to confront them and force the truth out of all of them.
It's pretty interesting, with the possible exception of Ron Paul. Most of the people in Congress are lawyers, are attorneys. They've got a title of nobility. They're called Esquire, and they don't have a business license. They have a membership card in the British Accredited Registry. So We're still fight. We didn't get free of England. They're still there. The Queen still controls our Social Security. The attorneys are based in the city of London, probably right next door to the Rothschilds.
Well, one thing I did a little research on because I approached my senator about Obamacare not being a law, which it isn't. They just play that it's a law, and people are getting sucked in just like they did with all those other acts I mentioned under the plan, like the Federal Reserve. It was never lawfully passed. So it's a piece of phony legislation. Same as Obamacare. It's never been passed. And people continue to perpetrate this fraud on the people. And so I challenged them. And at first they put me on with the regular rep of the that answers for the senator. And when it got too hot and heavy for him, they turned me over to this guy that was just rambling on and on and on, and ends up he's an attorney. And then he was a bar attorney. And I said, you realize that the bar is a union and it's a communist-run organization. And man, the guy couldn't get off the phone fast enough. But I went to the trouble, at least through what's available, on the title Esquire, because this guy who was an attorney, I brought that point up to him, and he said, no, Esquire is not a real title of nobility. And from everything I could find, that appears to be a correct statement. Now, there may be others who disagree and have found evidence, and it may have been changed, because if these guys don't like something and it works against them, they change it. They change history. They even go into the congressional record and rewrite the record. So there's nothing that's beyond reason for these guys. And it is the CFR that really controls our government, the people in the government. They put up the candidates. They control the parties. There's about 5,000 people in America who are members of the CFR, and you can learn all about the CFR. We have documentation there at the Scan Retina. A guy named G. Edward Griffin has done a marvelous job of explaining about the CFR and how the CFR got started. It all started with Cecil Rhodes, and Cecil Rhodes was the guy that was in charge of Africa and became extremely wealthy because of all the gold and diamonds and everything in Africa. And you may have heard of the Rhodes Foundation.
Yes.
Clinton was the one who was a Rhodes Scholar, and Clinton was the one that acknowledged Carroll Quigley. If you may remember his speech when he accepted, being the president at the time. And Quigley was the historian that the CFR permitted to see the inside. And he documented the whole thing. So G. Edward Griffin has done several pieces on the CFR. They're available. The link's available on YouTube, and you've got, if you don't remember that, you can go to the Scan Retina, and the links are there as well. And it gives you the whole background of how the CFR became involved and how they do everything. So we've been conned. We have been conned from the very beginning. And how the hell would anybody know they were conned when you're born into this? They've had generations to dumb down the people. If you have any doubt about that, there's a book by Charlotte Iserby. You'll also find a link, a reference to it, The Dumbing Down of America. 700-page PDF. You can download it from the web. That's a free version. And she details the plans of the communists that took over the Department of Education around, 1850 1915 or so, or no, I'm sorry, later than that. In 1905, I think it was. And they have deliberately, in this system, reducing the requirements. You may be, you may remember this happening, where they keep lowering the requirements. The people can't meet the criteria, so they lower the requirements, and they've done this consistently till the education people receive today qualifies them to do nothing, to be slaves, to be under their thumb, not to earn a living, not to think. Critical thinking is no longer part of the criteria. It's like law students don't even know about the common law grand jury. They've hidden that. So the Congress is the ones, if we need to fix this, there's several things we need to do, and as you mentioned, Clay, the media is certainly one, because they control what everybody sees, thinks, smells, hears, and they have us completely indoctrinated. And we're paying them to do that. The key, though, behind what happens is the Congress. They're the ones that pass all of this phony legislation that appears to be laws that continue to put people in the box, to squeeze us. They're the ones, and if you look at their behavior now, they don't even bother to hide it. All these, the debt ceiling, the budget crisis, they're all devices to stupefy Americans into believing they're doing something. Now, you mentioned Ron Paul. I believe Dr. Paul, for the longest time, was the one great guy in Congress, but it doesn't make sense that that could possibly be. And on searching, there's an entry on the blog called "They Protest Too Much." And in there, it shows you a little different view of Dr. Paul. And when you really think about it, the CFR and the New World Order people have been working at this too long not to have a backup plan. Now, I can't prove this, but it seems to me that Ron Paul was the backup plan in case, for some reason, they were able to remove Obama. And Ron Paul would have been their fallback position. Because anybody that has been part of this thing for as long as Ron Paul has to be somewhere playing part of the game. And even today that he's out, now he claims his muzzle is off. Well, if his muzzle is off, tell us about the usurpation and what it is that Obama's doing to keep 535 people who swore an oath to the Constitution to create a situation where they are routinely committing treason against the American people. How can you answer that, Mr. Paul?
He talks a good game, but his handlers, they wouldn't even let him see me when he was running for president, and I put him on the cover of my magazine. I went to Minneapolis to meet with him, and his handlers wouldn't let me see him. He's been on my show several times. And the biggest thing that you can say for Ron Paul is he isn't a lawyer.
He's a doctor.
Doctor, yes. Well, that's almost as bad, though, isn't it?
Well, hard to say.
I am not happy with doctors. They are trying to kill us. They're nothing but certified, legalized drug dealers. They're working for the pharmaceutical companies, and those pharmaceutical companies, when you buy a Valium or a Luvox or any of these things, they've got a 2,000% markup on it.
Yeah. Well, I think the big question people need to be asking is, how does the pharmaceutical organizations compensate the doctors for every prescription they write. Because if you look at the amount of controls over prescriptions, regardless of how you receive legal medicine or lawful medicine through the system, there are so many controls, whether you get mail order or whether you get it at the local pharmacy, and if you get it at the local pharmacy to take a temporary refill from a mail order, the data goes back and forth. They have all of this control over this data. And you ever notice, and maybe it's my imagination, but it seems like doctors seem to favor certain types of medication. You ever put a connection that maybe there's an incentive for them to promote certain medication more than others?
Oh, yeah,
And
I'm sure.
if they got all that control over it, doesn't it make sense that they can, in the accounting, make sure that the doctors that prescribe the right kind of medication are the ones that receive a spiff for every RX and every pill you take? Just thinking, just off the top of my head.
Well, I'm sure they get a kickback, and, that's, and you've got all these pharmaceutical salesmen.
Well, that's why you need the overhead. That's why you need the markup. It's like when we found out that the courts, the lower courts, are nothing but bill collectors. And the money that goes into the court system ends up getting on the bond market and sold multiple times. They become part of these toxic assets that are in the stock market. All that information is available. Clint Richardson out of Utah did a marvelous expose on how the judicial system, using attorneys who aren't licensed to handle investments, are involved in the investment business, just like Wall Street. No wonder none of them ever go to jail. The latest scam is they're trying to convince us that when they make these big settlements, that they're punishing the bankers. What a joke. That's pocket change to these guys. Until the people insist that the bankers go to jail, we're never going to clean up the financial thing.
When Obama was sworn in and Bush walked out of that revolving White House front door, he handed $2 trillion to the bankers that printed the money, and they printed the money, loaned it to the government. He gave it back to them to bail them out, and we're paying the interest on that. Your grandchildren never pay the interest on that $2 trillion, Arnie.
It's actually worse, Clay. The money that people pay in taxes, income taxes, goes to the banks. It goes to the Federal Reserve. It doesn't even go to the Treasury. It doesn't go to the IRS. It temporarily goes to the IRS and remains in an escrow account for a period, and then it's transferred to the Federal Reserve and the IMF, International Money Bank of Settlements. So the government is not living off of the money that we pay in taxes. Instead, I've been led to believe that the Treasury prints the money. It goes to Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs takes their 10% and deposits it into government checking accounts from where the checks are issued to pay everybody for their Social Security, to pay the military their salaries, to pay all the bills. They could care less whether money's coming in or not as long as the printing presses are going, because they've converted our money into worthless paper that it has absolutely no intrinsic value except the good faith of Americans and people of the world who believe if you give them a 20 or 100, they're going to get $100 worth of services and goods in exchange. It's all based on good faith. And we're paying the price. We pay a 10% commission before the money is ever put into our hands.
That's true. That's true. Now, I just listened today to an investment guy, a broker, supposedly well-renowned, talking about the monetary system, talking about how we're losing our status as the world's currency. You know, and it's interesting. He never pointed out that the Federal Reserve is a private bank and it's issuing this money illegally. I mean, they don't really have any right to do that. The Congress is supposed to do that.
Oh, but that you're wrong. Congress gave them the right, but Congress didn't have the right to give it to them. You see, Congress delegated their authority, but you can't delegate an authority that's been delegated to you. Congress, by the American people, has been delegated responsibility for money through the Constitution. It's a contract. When these guys take the oath of office, they are entering into a contract to deliver goods and services to the voter. And when they're paid, the public treasury, whether it's through a city, a county, the state, depending on their job, they take that first check. That's signing the deal. That's confirming the contract. Now, when they violate their oath of office by either not following their commitment to do the right thing or their fiduciary responsibilities, then they are committing perjury, insurrection, rebellion against the law of the land, which is known as the Constitution. So every one of these members of Congress, whether they recognize it or not, and we don't even care, they're guilty of, at minimum, impersonating officers of the government because they're impersonators. They have long ago abandoned their contract. The first time they violate their oath, they've abandoned the contract. They're no longer under contract. They're no longer valid to receive compensation from the federal treasuries or wherever they're being paid publicly. And so they're impersonators. And that's a federal crime. Now the difference is, how long are people going to put up with this once they understand they've been taken advantage of? And the solution, as you're probably well aware of, is no big deal if enough people will stand up together. They just need to stand up and say, we're not going to accept this. You are our servants. We created the government. The government can never turn around and control the people who created it. That's crazy. Even though they keep making noises like they have the authority, no, what they do have is the guns and the jails, and yeah, they can lock us up and they can kill us, but not lawfully. Legally, they can do that because they made these rules. But it's like you hired a bunch of employees and they go change the locks on your store and start depositing the sales in their checking accounts. You just need to go in and kick their ass and put them back in line or fire them. And that's what needs to be done. Every member of Congress needs to be replaced. And we really shouldn't wait. We should remove them either by recall or revoking their bonds, because I don't think there's anybody out there that could find a member of Congress who hasn't violated their oath or violated their fiduciary responsibilities. Even the fact that those who put through Obamacare and admitted they never read the bill. How the hell can you sign a contract and not read the details when you're acting on somebody else's behalf? That's a violation of the fiduciary responsibilities. Anybody got any comeback on that?
No, not for me. You're right about this. But again, this is the color of law. And the FBI, the CIA, the Mossad, the MI6, they are all working for these banksters. These banksters are criminals. This is organized crime. They're bringing the drugs into this country. They're selling it to you and your children. And then if they know who's got the drugs, they know who's using the drugs because they sold it to you. It's kind of like well, how do you know Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction? Well, we saw the invoice.
Well, the point is, while it may not be a favorable position, people don't have to buy drugs. They don't have to use drugs. They introduce the drugs to the people to get them hooked on it. But it goes back, if you know who Karen Hudis is.
I have her on my show a number of times.
Okay, well, if according to Karen, the Vatican has a connection with the intelligence community of their own, and they're the ones that are really pulling the strings behind the background. I can't prove that, but that's what she contends.
Well, it's true, but she also kind of ignores the whole Jewish connection. And the Jewish connection, the Jews are the money changers. They've been around for 2,000 years. It's a scam. They've been pulling on people and holding the gold and manipulating the governments for years.
Well, there's some confusion about that. There were a group of people called the Khazars.
Yes, sir.
And they mixed with the Jews and became part of the Zionists. Now, you can be a Zionist and not be Jewish. So, in fact, I even saw a clip a few days ago where Joe Biden claims he's a Zionist.
Yes, sir.
So, you know, Zionism is something that is different than Judaism, but the same group of people in their interest to break people into various groups that pit people against each other. I mean, their method is obvious.
Yes, sir.
So I don't know if that adds any extra insight into the issue.
Well, it doesn't. They hide, these elite hide behind the Jewish people, and they will sacrifice 6 million of them in a heartbeat if it gains them a little bit of an advantage. They've been raising money for 6 million persecuted Jews in the Ukraine since the turn of the century, before Germany ever popped up, and before Germany ever became an issue. They've been they hide behind these people. They're not the tribes of Israel. They're not original Israelites. They've proved that by DNA. But they control Hollywood. They control the news companies. They control all of the publishing companies. They publish your textbooks, and you know, it's not just, you can't just say they're a Khazar. They might have been, hell, my family came from Germany, but I'm a Texan now.
Well, that's obvious. You ride a Harley.
Yeah, my horse is steel, thank you anyway, and I by the way, I still ride it with a cowboy hat.
Well, listen, we've all been conned in as many ways as it's possible to con people. So you can't believe anything they've said because they're trying to hide their identity. If you get right down to it, the Pope is the one who has claimed dominion over the world. And it's the Pope who received all of the credits to America for the ground itself, as well as everything else from the King of England when they lost the war. But let me ask you, how can you give something you don't own? In fact, when you come to recognize that the only one that stands between us and anything, it's the Creator, for those who admit or accept that there is a Creator. So if we all report to the Creator, that means nobody, doesn't matter who they are, nobody has dominion over another person on this planet unless that person chooses to give dominion to somebody else. Now, when you're age of consent, you can do that. If you wish to follow a particular faith and you want to, oblige yourself in that manner, that's up to you. But you're the one that does it. You don't turn yourself over to the federal government. You don't turn yourself over to the local police or to the local city or the county. We're all sovereign individuals. Once you recognize that, then you begin to recognize that all of this supposed control and dominance that they try to convince you exist is a lie. It doesn't exist. They can write laws, they can publish it, they can do all these things that make it appear that there are laws, but they aren't laws. And therefore, if they're unconstitutional, they're not a law, you're not obligated to obey it.
That's true. That is true. And, it's Lynn Meredith, I promoted her book, Vultures in Eagles' Clothing, and, people would ask me, well, is this true? I mean, we don't have to pay the IRS. And I said, everything she says and everything she's telling you is true. When you pay the IRS, your check comes back stamped, paid to the order of the Federal Reserve. The IRS is a foreign collection agency for the foreign bankers that control the Federal Reserve. And some of them are American, some of them are American. Rockefeller and, J.P. Morgan, they were American. But it's a little like going up to Al Capone and going, hey, Al, I found out that extortion's illegal, and I'm not paying you no more. So when you get out of the hospital there, when you get out of the hospital after having your kneecap smashed, you may want to reconsider paying. This is the Federal Reserve and these banksters. They've started every war. I mean, Mel Gibson was right. The Jews have started every war. And I got that information from a Jewish historian by the name of Benjamin Friedman. Aaron Russo, another Jewish filmmaker, he told us he came out real straight. He told you the truth about the Federal Reserve. He told you the truth about the IRS, and he told you about a conversation he had with Nicholas Rockefeller about how they intended to switch over to electronic money and get everybody to have a chip.
They want to put
a chip.
Yeah, they want to chip everybody.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, and they he ended up dying of bladder cancer, which, many believe that was induced.
I believe it was induced. I believe it was induced.
So, there's evidence all over the place, but it gets down to the one thing, Clay, until the people themselves decide they've had enough and all they need to do is work together, come together in groups, form counties, organized by counties, and there's plenty of groups out there now. There's a constitutional club that's run by a guy named Keith Broders. He's got all 3,100 counties organized. The people just need to join up and begin working with fellow patriots in the county to organize and begin to form their own groups. Carl Swenson, which I think you spoke with.
Yes, he'll be on my show this next week.
Yeah, he's initiated a program that was developed by Stephen Hance called trying to think of the name of it. It's the Board of Review is what it's really called, and it permits the people to get together, and they essentially start administering their own groups. You could do it by city, by county, the state, the whole thing. It's well organized, and the people don't have to ask anybody's permission. We are in charge. The people have the final say. It doesn't matter what these politicians tell you. They're all lying through their teeth. They even pass laws to let them lie. So, fellow Americans, we just need to band together. You could go into a city council, 25, 30 people, and take them on and force the issue and get them to swear their oath properly and commit to being a de jure government, and you start issuing, the correct constitutional laws and insist that everything that's not constitutional is made null and void. We the people have that capability. We just need to do it. We need to recognize it.
Well, Keith Broders is being on my show. I've got links to him. I'm trying to help everybody out there that's trying to do the right thing. And folks, by the way, I need a little bit of help this time. Let me put in a little plug here. I really need for you guys to go to freeamerican.com and click on one of the donate buttons there and make a donation. Now, RJ, I appreciate you ordering that. You now have everything that you ordered. They're all PDFs, all the magazines, everything. I don't pay Hearst Paper Company to print my magazines anymore. I don't pay UPS to ship my magazine and my books anymore. Everything's up on my shop.freeamerican.com. They're all PDFs, and it's it's the way we got to do it. I mean, I used to write these magazines. I would print 10,000 of them. I'd pay UPS and the post office to ship them to you. Now we can do them all electronically. You can read everything. If you want to see a hard copy, then you can print it out on your printer, on your thing.
Well, Clay, that brings up a very interesting point. I think Thomas Paine, who wrote Common Sense and was pretty much responsible for many people back in the colonies to become aware, we need to borrow something out of his history book along with your skills. And we need to create a national media network where the patriots themselves actually may resort to printing out 8.5 by 11 on their own local printers, maybe 10 copies each or something like that, and passing them out to their friends and neighbors so that we can get the written word out to people who are not on the web, which I believe is a sizable number of grayheads. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, we've tried to do that a number of times. We've had media organizations with me, Media Bypass, Oregon Observer, and most of those people have either been killed or taken offline or destroyed or arrested, framed for bank robbery. A lot of the authors here, people, have been harassed, stolen, still doing it. It is still happening. It's still happening. And it just takes a little thing like yesterday. I rode up 30 miles to go up to get some work done on my motorcycle, and before I left, before I got back home, something else went wrong. Something else on the motorcycle broke. I had a motor mount loose, so I got that fixed, and then the stator went out on the motorcycle. Now, the people fixed it for me. The shop, they were good enough to get it fixed so I could get home. But I had to give them a check from my account, and they don't have the money in it. So I need to get some donations, folks. If you just go click on the donate button on freeamerican.com, you can donate. And I'm sure I'll get that from I'm sure that most of you will make a donation. RJ did order some books. Now he's got all of his books. I shipped him everything. The videos have to be shipped. The hard copy of the Mystery Babylon has to be shipped. That's been shipped. The rest of them, you can get them and read them today. You got all of the magazines. Everything is online. It's on PDF. But I need a little bit more. I've got a $500 check to cover, and Texas still puts you in jail if you write a hot check. So they're holding it for me for a couple of days, but I need some donations to be able to cover that. And folks, this is not, I think about this. This really kind of bothers me. The Americans who they donated $2 billion or $1 billion to the Republicans and the Democrats, to these candidates that were running for office, and Barack Obama among them. They donated $1 billion. Where did that money go? Oh yeah.
Where did it come from, too?
Well, it came from the American people, but they donated it to the Republican and Democratic parties, and the Republican and Democratic parties, which are controlled by the bankers, they donated that money. They gave that money back. They bought time on these media-controlled, this banker-controlled media you call television, you call newspapers, and we just talked about that at the beginning of the show. These media companies, they sprung up. The Rothschild family bought Reuters at the turn of the century before the Federal Reserve even took over. And so we just keep feeding the beast. And there's one media company out there, one media outlet, this radio show, this magazine, the Free American, this book, Mystery Babylon. I got fiction books too that just I wrote them for entertainment. Unfortunately, what I wrote as fiction 45 years ago has turned into fact today. I was a little ahead of my time. And you know, folks, I've been telling you the truth for 20 years. I've been doing this for 20 years. They've tried to kill me. They've tried to silence me. They've tried to stop me. So many times it's, I don't even like to talk about it anymore. It's just, I'm just repeating myself. And I've tried to tell you folks I'm the canary in the coal mine. So things break. Machines break. It ain't no big deal normally. For me, this time, it's a big deal. Because if you don't support me, if I don't get the donations in to cover this check, I'll end up going to jail for writing a hot check. You know, it's and so this wasn't the CIA, this wasn't the Mossad, this wasn't anybody doing anything. This is a mechanical failure. You know, a stator failed on a motorcycle. If I'd taken it to Harley Davidson, it would have been about $1,000. But I had people that I work with here that I try to support that put it all back together for $500. It's so I'm not, I generally don't even beg or even ask you guys for donations. If I sell enough magazines, that's all I need. And one of the reasons I was able to get this motor mount fixed was because RJ bought some magazines. He bought some magazines, bought some books. I mailed the books, I mailed the videos to him, and I just sent him all of the magazines that he ordered. And this is this is the way I do business now. This is the way we got to do business. So folks, if this is working together, everything that Arnie has told you here about Keith Brothers, well, guess what? I've had Keith Brothers on here. You know about his organization because I've had him on. I've been promoting him. I've had links up on my website. This is what we do. And, this is where we got to operate. But we've got to work together. Now, one of the, I've come up with a whole plan for Liberty Villages, Arnie. I came up with that years ago, and I said, if you can grow your own food and generate your own energy from everything God gave you, the wind and the sun, with the technology we have today, then you don't really need the bankers for much. And I believe
that makes a lot of sense.
The foundation of every civilization, according to another friend of mine, Richard Kelly Hoskins, is the self-sufficient family farm. And I'm now working with a company here that is building the self-sufficient family home. The farm is on the roof. The solar power is on the roof. And in the basement, you've got chemtrail-free rainwater filtered into the 16 or 30, I think it's about a 10,000 gallon tank in the bottom of the house. And that's you're not connected to the power lines. J.P. Morgan, now Tesla invented broadcast electricity. J.P. Morgan squashed that because he couldn't put a meter on it. These houses that we're talking about building, and I've got it all over my website. I got the links. Next magazine, which be about 3 days late here. I'll finish this magazine over the weekend, and then will have, then it'll be up on my website. And when you buy that magazine, you download it right there. You're supposed to download it right there. And this will be pretty much a brochure for the self-sufficient family home with a farm on top. With each house will be capable of growing thousands of pounds of food. I had a lady contact me out of Colorado. She got 40 acres there, and she's trying to figure out how to keep it, how to make money off of it. And I said, well, grow hemp, grow marijuana, grow it. You can do it there now. Oh, we can't because we don't have water. We don't have the water for it. Here in Colorado, it rains all the time in Colorado. Oh, but we're not allowed to save the rainwater. We're not allowed to put a rain barrel there. We're not allowed to do that. That is illegal. They can't stop you from collecting rainwater. You can fight that, and we've got companies. Mike Connolly is going to be on my show next month, and he's got a legal firm that will help you fight that. So, you know, folks, if we're working together here, if you are supporting me and backing me, I'm going to do all of the research. I'm going to find you all of those things. Tesla, this company took Tesla's name and built electric cars, and they're even entering them in races, electric cars. And now, but the only problem with electric cars was, the batteries, the batteries are too much. They got to be too big. You know, it can only take you 200 miles. Well, guess what? Americans are the most inventive people in the world. So somebody put generators, put alternators into wheels. So while you're rolling along in your electric car, you're generating enough electricity from your wheels, from your tires, to run the car. We are doing this is incredible. Now there is the Mystery Babylon, RJ. Mystery Babylon is it's a hard copy book. I mean, it's not a hard copy, but it's a quality color paper cover. It's quality book. It's 500 pages, and you get that. The mail is coming. The video, American Dreamer Nightmare, is coming to you. That's in the mail. That was mailed on a few days ago, a couple of days ago. So it ought to be in the mail there right now. So there is now, I said I'd be glad to send you, while you're waiting on the hard copy, I'll be glad to send you Mystery Babylon via Skype. And you've got Final Judgment right there online. That's not a hard copy. That's not a hard copy. That's PDF. You need to accept the Final Judgment there, and you can get that. And as far as Mystery Babylon, that book is on your way. It's signed. It's signed, and here's something you can start reading while you're waiting for it. Okay, so you got two books, Final Judgment and Mystery Babylon, up on your Skype right now. How about that? And yeah, you can get an autographed copy, Ted. You can get an autographed copy of Mystery Babylon. I got one here I could probably make a hell of a deal on. It's completely intact, but the cover was glued on upside down. I'll give that one to you, Ted, and autograph it. But, folks, if you can today, make a donation. It would help me out tremendously. I've really tried to do this all alone. And so, Okay, what do we got here? Alright. Alright, Arnie, tell me a little bit more about your side. Now, we still got 40 minutes here. You sent me some things. If you'd like to share that with us, you just sent me some things up on Skype that I haven't.
There's some things that will back up the things you were mentioning. The people might want to hear Randy Do himself, because that opens up another whole area that we've been working with people who have done nothing wrong, who have not violated any laws, and are mostly in prison.
Well, one of my favorite quotes here is Ayn Rand told us that you have no, the government has no control over honest citizens, so they've got to make criminals out of us, and that's what they're doing. It's what the tax laws are about. Everything else.
Well, tax laws, they made a business out of putting people in prison. They make more money by putting people in prison. They usually select people, the family courts, for instance, are a perfect example where they really abuse the father, strip him of all his income so he can't fight, and then they throw him in jail. And then they get paid under the table for everyone they put in jail. So it's
now you've got you sent me one thing here. I think I'd like to play. It's talking about the IRS, and this is Aaron Russo. I guess he's talking with Sheldon Cohen, who's a former commissioner, and Aaron put out the movie. It was actually in prime time. Let's hear what this has got to say.
My questions. He graciously agreed to my interview. The reason I'm doing this documentary is because there are many people in America today who believe that there's no law that requires them to pay an income tax or file a 1040.
I don't know if you can hear that.
Jail for it, fighting over it.
I don't think you can hear this.
Yeah, you might have to turn it up.
It's as loud as it can go.
Well, let me see if perhaps.
If you've got a louder one you can play, that might work.
Yeah, let me give it a shot here.
And I couldn't find a better person to answer my question.
Yeah, that's better. I can hear that.
The reason I'm doing this documentary is because there are many people in America today who believe that there's no law that requires them to pay an income tax or file a 1040. And there are many people going to jail for it, fighting over it.
The Internal Revenue Code is authorized by the 16th Amendment.
I think it should be clarified. I think government should be transparent to the people. Why didn't the IRS commissioner sit down with them and just explain it in clear English? Why?
I don't think they really care. I think they're just playing word games.
You don't think they're sincere people?
No, I don't think they're sincere people.
What is the voluntary compliance?
And why did the IRS code say it's voluntary to comply, not mandatory?
That's a word euphemism we use. We use voluntary compliance when we talk about traffic signals. Most people, at 2 o'clock in the morning, do you stop at a red light?
Yeah.
Is there a cop there?
Sometimes I don't.
And most of us do. Most of us do.
Right.
But that's voluntary compliance.
He's
That's
lying.
a complete perversion of logic.
So could the government criminally prosecute somebody if information is on their 1040?
Yes.
Right. So doesn't that violate the Fifth Amendment?
No.
The Fifth Amendment says I don't have to do anything that incriminates myself.
Well, it doesn't incriminate you to put your income down.
But you said before I've been put in jail for it.
The commissioner wants us to believe that although the IRS demands that you fill out the 1040 and you can go to jail for it, that they are not violating your Fifth Amendment rights of self-incrimination. That is absurd.
Isn't it true that the word income is not defined anywhere in the Internal Revenue Code? source derived. So the word income is not defined in the code.
You see how they get around it. He's absolutely right. It is purely voluntary, and it only applies to government employees, people who are affected by the federal zone, which is like Obamacare and anything else that Congress passes as their supposed legislation. It does not affect the citizens of America. It affects those part of the federal zone. The corporation. It's like if you worked for Kmart, you'd be obligated to follow the regulations of Kmart. Well, Washington, D.C. essentially is Kmart. It's the United States Corporation. It's not the United States of America, the people. That's simple.
Is income without a definition of what income is, correct? Because there are many different kinds of taxes. Well, how can an American citizen know what income is if the code doesn't define it? If they're paying income,
Because the courts will define it.
Do you remember what constitutional attorney Edwin Vieira said?
The definition of income in the Constitution was given in the Eisner versus Montgomery case, and it turns on gains or profits that are made from some activity.
So the Supreme Court has ruled. Income is not wages, it's not labor. It's gain from corporate activity.
I believe that a man's labor is his private property.
That's your view, but it's not the law.
The Supreme Court even said your labor is your private property. When I go to work for somebody, it's a trade. It's an even exchange. I do some work, you give me some money.
Well, you know, again, I kind of admire them for this. They are really they're really honest, and to a certain extent. I mean, they tell you that we have the most successful voluntary taxation system ever.
Well, they're lying. The IRS is a collection agency based in, I think it's Costa Rica, or
Yep.
I'm sorry, Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, yes, sir.
And the trust funds are in the Philippines. And that's where the money goes.
But
And that's where they hide it.
well, when they say it's voluntary, I chose not to volunteer. I invited an IRS agent in and said, you know what? I ain't paying this. This is a fraudulent debt. I don't owe it. I'm not paying it. And not only that, I'm never filing again. You want to put the cuffs on and take me away now? I will never file again. I won't volunteer anymore. And
well, the other thing is not to go into their. If they summon you to the court, it's an invitation, and you can, number one, you can, if you do choose to go in and fight it, you can do it through Skype. And there are people who have found that if they demand the judge to identify himself properly as per 63 AmJur, which is 63C American jurisprudence, they need to provide all their information as to their bond, as to their oath of office, all of these things, and in most cases that is successful, the judge is not even rich, and so they will not take the time to identify themselves properly, and in many cases, they simply dismiss the case with prejudice.
yes, sir. I believe that. You know, I believe that.
So there's, if the folks are interested in any of these real abuses, like in the case of Randy Dew, you know, the legislators in Oklahoma, the governor, attorney general, I've even posted information to the provost marshal general of the Army a ready situation. And we don't know it, but this is what we need people to do. One person doing it is not going to create a rainstorm, and that's what we need. The end of people writing to these people will take it on. Better yet, go to offices and economically, and do it with enough people to make the point.
Well, there are some officers, retired officers, that are calling for a march on Washington, and this thing.
That's Harry Riley.
Harry Riley, yes, sir. And when we had 1 million bikers show up there in opposition to the Million Muslim March, the million Muslims didn't show up, but the bikers did.
Right.
And I said the only mistake they made was not leaving until they arrested all of these traitors, son of a bitches.
Well, it'd be good of you to organize bikers and join Harry Riley.
Trying to do that, making people aware of it. Got the information up about Harry Riley, got him in my next publisher's column. And at the same time, we're trying to do this whole thing with these houses. Noah West just dropped me a line down the rabbit hole again. And he has this self-sufficient family home, and he wants to organize them into a 40-acre village with a farm right there in the middle of it, and on your roof you're still growing food too. So this makes the whole village and every home totally self-sufficient and totally productive. And I told him, I said, man, as soon as you do this, as soon as I put you up on the Free American website, they're going to start hassling you. They're going to do everything they can to try to derail this. This is their biggest nightmare, that the American people will wake up and understand that we can be self-sufficient. We don't have to buy this gasoline. We can run our own electricity. We can generate our own electricity from the wheels turning. We don't have to live in this planned obsolescence society. These homes that he's talking about, that he's designed and that he's researched, will last for 100 years. But once you get them done, think about this: no more electric bills, no more gasoline bills. You got a little electric vehicle there with and the tires you put on it, the wheels you put on it, will generate all the electricity to run it. I mean, I used to generate my my headlight on my bicycle when I was about 12 years old. My headlight had a little generator that clamped onto the fender or to the spoke, the front wheels, and it rubbed up against the wheel, and that would generate enough electricity to run the light.
Yeah, but you provided the power.
I did that.
By pedaling.
I did that.
By pedaling. Yep.
But I had to pedal it anyway to ride the bike. So by putting a little wheel against a wheel, I had headlights. Nobody else had headlights.
Not only that, but it took a little extra weight off you too.
Yep. Then I graduated to a Harley. And thank you, Arnie. I appreciate the donation. I saw that. Thank you very much, man. And if you other folks out there would do the same thing, I might be able to skate on jail for another week.
Well,
and you know, what I've said, Arnie, the answer, we have the answer. Keith Broaders is doing a great job with the Constitution Club. People are becoming aware. He's waking people up. You know, I've said I don't think I've done anything wrong in the last 40 years. Matter of fact, 25 years ago, I put out a magazine called High Country, High Adventure for Today's Cowboys. And I had interview with Hank Williams Jr. I had trucker fiction called Long Rider. I had Whitewater, the meanest bronc of them all. The man who outran death, that was a logger. Great Cowboys in the White House. Plus music, motorcycles, and rodeo. And I had a few good-looking women in it too. But I was just talking to somebody, and I pulled one of the surviving copies out, and I found this in it. This is something I wrote over 25 years ago, before the Free American, before any of my motorcycle magazines. Whereas we are Americans and proud to be so. Our tradition of freedom is the shining light of this whole beautiful world. The greatest of these freedoms is our right to be individuals. We do what we want. We go where we please. We dress as we like. We obey the just and reasonable laws of our countries. We speak out against unjust and ineffective laws without fear of reprisal. We band together with other patriots to effect worthy changes. We follow wise leaders. We vote out the foolish. We compete in a fair marketplace and expect a fair return for our energies. We meditate in the middle of a wilderness and watch the eagle fly. We protect and provide for our families. We teach them the meaning of freedom and duty. We are descended from our forefathers' spirit and courage. We are indebted to them for freedom they bequeathed us. We shall fight to the death for the right to pass these gifts on to our sons. It is because America keeps her own peace that all people from all lands are inspired. America is a dream come true and continues to make dreams come true. We rejoice in the miracle of our hearts, our minds, and our hands. We worship the Father who makes all things possible. We pray for the vision and strength to keep the light shining. We make the best of who we are. We are living in the tradition of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We are today's cowboys. So, you know, in retrospect, I don't think I've ever, I've been on the right track in almost everything I've done for the last 50 years.
well, the only thing you didn't do right is recognize that these people were lying to you and deceiving you. And while you were being a good guy and doing all the good things, they have been planning and orchestrating the destruction of our American Republic by deceit.
Well, not perfect. We still make mistakes.
Yep. But once we learn, then it's up to us to fix it.
What do you think about this Harry Riley's, Colonel Harry Riley's? What do you think about his march? I mean, this plan for the self-sufficient home that is supposed to, he wants that built by veterans, for veterans. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a shame that our veterans are too many of them are homeless. I think it's a national tragedy that more of my brothers who went to Vietnam committed suicide than were killed over there. They committed suicide after they got home here to the United States after they served in Vietnam. And the Vietnamese weren't our enemies
Yeah,
anymore than the Russians were.
From what I know of Colonel Riley, he is an extremely honest, honorable man who is a true hero in the truest sense, and I believe his efforts are sincere. So there's a lot of people that'll follow Colonel Riley, and I think he's trying to do the right thing for the right reasons. Now, as far as the important point that brings tears to the eyes of the strongest patriots is the other point you mentioned. All of our veterans, the first thing to think about, in my view at least, all wars that have been fought, including the Civil War, were unnecessary wars. They were created under this illusion that we were doing a noble thing. And I believe that's all part of the divisiveness that has been concocted to enable them to sell us on these wars. And it's not the people, as you pointed out, with whom we have a war or a battle. It's what I call the code holders. And the code holders, you've seen them, they'll start an argument between two people. They'll spend their, fight each other, sometimes to the death. Meanwhile, the code holder is the one responsible for the fight. We've allowed ourselves to become victimized. And it's clear as a bell to me that the members of Congress are the ones that have been at this, the single most focused group to deliberately destroy our nation. You have to go look at what they've done. It's all a matter of history, a matter of record. And they're doing it today right in front of us.
Oops. Well, they are doing it, and again, there's no statute of limitations on treason, I don't believe.
Well, it's just as plain to me. Maybe I'm alone. I got to admit, my vision is pretty blurry sometimes. But this stuff really sticks out to me now.
We have to, the oldest maxim in warfare is being used against us right now. It's called divide and conquer. They're trying to do that with Tea Parties. They're trying to do that with race. They're trying to do that. I don't care. I don't care what race you are. I don't care what color you are. I don't care who your grandmother slept with. It just doesn't seem to be a matter of importance to me. And it's we're kind of coming down. We're kind of coming down to the wire here. You know, the whole world is starting to wake up to this money manipulators in Europe, in the European Union. They have the Libor scandal, and they're starting to and this whole banking crash here. The banks that are too big to fail is bullshit, and we should have let them fail. They people are starting to realize that we're being manipulated. They're manipulating the stock. They're manipulating the prices. They're manipulating the economy, and they're certainly manipulating the press.
Well, if you want to see evidence of the progress they're making at taking the New World Order apart in Europe, just look up Nigel Farage in the UK.
What's that? Tell me about that. Now, they've done this in Iceland. They kicked the bankers out.
Yep.
Hungary, I believe, has done the same thing, too.
Well, it's all across the world. And, people just need to spend a little time and begin to follow through on all this. And they could see the whole global experience at one place.
Okay, I've got your Nigel Farage. Let's see if we can hear this. Let's see if we can do this. Because he's talking about the same thing we're talking about right now. Now, this is happening in England, United Kingdom, I guess. Big banks, big business, and big bureaucrats run the economic, the European Union, the EU. I mean, Soviet Union was the first attempt. The European Union is the second attempt. And they've already pretty much signed the agreement for the North American Union. They're letting the drug dealers come across here. And matter of fact, that's another thing that we should be talking about. The whole let me see here. This story just came across my desk. An investigation found that between the years of 2000 and 2012, the U.S. government had an arrangement with Mexico's Sinaloa drug cartel that allowed the organization to smuggle billions of dollars of drugs, while Sinaloa provided information on rival cartels. Sinaloa, led by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, supplies 80% of the drugs that enter the Chicago area and has a presence in cities across the U.S. There have long been allegations that Guzman, considered to be the world's most powerful drug trafficker, coordinates with American authorities. But the Universal Investigation is the first to publish court documents that include corroborating testimony between a DEA agent and a Justice Department official. The written statements were made by the U.S. District Court in Chicago in relation to the arrest of Jesus Vicente Zambada Nabila, the son of Sinaloa leader Ishmael Almayo Zambada, and allegedly the Sinaloa cartel's logistics coordinator. Here's what the DE agent Manuel Castanon told the Chicago court on March 17, 2004. I met for approximately 30 minutes in a hotel in Mexico City with the Vicente Zambada Nabila and two other individuals, DE agent David Herod, and a cooperating source, a Sinaloa lawyer, Castro, with whom I'd worked since 2012. I did all the talking on behalf of the DEA. A few hours later, Mexican Marines arrested Zambada Nabela El Vicentio on charges of trafficking more than $1 billion in cocaine and heroin. Castanon and 3 other agents then visited Zambada Nabela in prison, where the Sinaloa officer reiterated his desire to cooperate. In court records reports that DEA agents met with high-level Sinaloa officials such as Castro more than 50 times since 2000. And according to the DEA agent Steve Farga, Castro provided information leading to 23-ton cocaine seizure, other seizures relating to various trafficking operations, and that Zambada wanted his son to cooperate with the U.S. I mean, they are working together. The DEA is working together with these drug dealers. The CIA is working with the drug dealers, with the Mossad and everything else. And then we want to go back, let me go back here to this European Union, talking about big banks, big business, and bureaucrats running the EU. This is Nigel, what's his name here?
Now for the EFD group, Mr. Farage.
Well, I must congratulate you, Mr. Samaras, for getting the Greek presidency off to such a cracking start. Your overnight successful negotiation and the trialogue on MiFID, I'm sure, will have them dancing in the streets of Athens. No matter that your country, very poorly advised by Goldman Sachs, joined a currency that it was never suited to. No matter that 30% are unemployed, that 60% of youth are unemployed, that a neo-Nazi party is on the march, that there was a terrorist attack on the German embassy. No, don't worry about all that, because the trialogue on MiFID has been a success. And in many ways, it sums up the 2 Europes. The Europe that's talked about in here by the Dreamers, who want to impose a new United States of Europe with an identity and a currency, and the real world out there. And you come here, Mr. Samaras, and you tell us that you represent
Try to break it up a bit.
Yeah, but let me stop that for just a second. This is Nigel Farage, and I'm not sure how well that's coming through, but it's linked on scannedretina.com. And
see if this is any better.
Now for the EFD group, Mr. Farage.
I must congratulate you, Mr. Samaras, for getting the Greek presidency off to a cracking start. Your overnight successful negotiation and the trialogue on MiFID, I'm sure, will have them dancing in the streets. Athens, no matter your country, very poorly advised by Goldman Sachs, joined a currency that it was never suited to. No matter that 30% are unemployed, that 60% are unemployed, that the neo-Nazi party is on the march, that there was a terrorist attack on the German embassy. No, don't worry about all that, because the trialogue on MiFID has been a success. And in many ways, the Europe that's talked about in here by the Dreamers, who want to impose a new United States of Europe with an identity and a currency and the real world out there. And you come, Mr. Samaras, and you tell us that you represent the sovereign will of the Greek people. Well, I'm sorry, but you're not in charge of Greece. I suggest you rename and rebrand your party. It's called New Democracy. I suggest you call it No Democracy, because Greece is now under foreign control. You can't make any decisions. You've been bailed out, and you've surrendered democracy, the thing your country invented in the first place. And you can't admit that joining the euro was a mistake, because, of course, Mr. Papandreou did that, didn't he? He even said there should be a referendum in Greece. And within 48 hours, the unholy trinity that now run this European Union had him removed and replaced by an ex-Goldman Sachs employee puppet. We are run now by big business, big banks, and Mr. Barroso, big bureaucrats. And actually, that's what these European elections are really going to be all about. It's going to be a battle of national democracy versus EU state bureaucracy. Whatever you may say in this chamber,
The people out there don't want a United States of Europe. They want a Europe of sovereign states trading and working together. And I believe the European elections are going to mark a watershed. Up until now, everybody has thought, much as they may not like the development of the European Union, that it was inevitable. That myth of inevitability will be shattered by the European elections this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that came through.
Yes, sir, that came through. That came through. All right, we've got just a few more minutes here. And again, Arnie, thank you for the donation. I would really like for you folks out there to match that and to make a donation today. It will really help out. I've already got the work done. The motorcycle's probably good for another 50,000 miles now. New stator, new motor mounts. The motor mount was broken entirely in two, so if I hadn't got that fixed, you know, the whole motor might have dropped out. Still got a couple other things, a little welding to do on the kickstand, but otherwise, my people up there in at the Victoria Iron Works did an excellent job. Late in the afternoon, they worked till about 9 o'clock. They did a great job. They did a great job, and the motorcycle's safe. It's got good tires. Now the motor mount's fixed, and the stator's fixed, and I got a new alternator on it. It's my transportation, you know. It's my steel horse. But guys, it's I gotta pay for it. I gotta pay for it. And they were nice enough to go ahead and get it fixed and let me ride it home. I don't believe the Harley dealership would have done that. So, Arnie, again, appreciate you being on my show. We're out of time here. The links to Arnie's site are up on mine, freeamerican.com. Donation buttons there at freeamerican.com. Try to use it today, folks. Let's keep us on the air. Let's keep us doing this. I got a hell of a lineup for next week. I'm looking forward to talking to this associate of yours, too. The, what have I got here? That's Carl Swinson.
Yeah.
Carl Swinson, yes. And Monday we got Jason Gambert, jasongambert.com. Dan Johnson, who missed my show yesterday, or day before yesterday. He will be on with me on Tuesday. That's talking about Panda and People United Against the NDAA. Carl Swinson, RiseUpForAmerica.com, will be on Thursday. And appreciate it, guys. Appreciate everything that you all are doing. I appreciate your support. Appreciate you listening. God bless you. And you guys have a great day. All right. We're out of here. Thank you again, Arnie. Great show.
You're welcome. Good to meet you. Good luck.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye now. Come on.